As Jonathan Edwards once said, the best, most beautiful, and most perfect way that we have of expressing a sweet concord of mind to each other is by music. Welcome to the Christian Music Bros podcast with Brendan and Braden, a weekly podcast with two bros who love Christian music and discussing it. Welcome either if you're a returner or a brand new listener. Thank you for tuning in. You are now listening to the Christian Music Bros podcast with Brendan and Braden.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Christian Music Bros podcast. Again, I'm Brendan, and you can see Braden's not here again. He's being a working man, so props to him. And remember, if you like what you're listening to, please like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast. Today, I'm here with Caleb Stanton, and I'm going to allow Caleb to introduce himself now. So go ahead, Caleb.
Thanks for having me on. This will be good. Excited to just chat about music and whatever you want to chat about. So yeah, I'm a Christian artist. Been songwriting since I was like 5 or 6 maybe. But really started hardcore writing when I was about 14 years old. And over the last 5 years, I've just been recording a lot of that music. So yeah, I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Can you tell us about what inspired you to start doing music? Like what motivated you, like writing songs? Like a little bit about the background.
Yeah. So I've kind of just always grown up around music. There was like always music on at my house. Both my parents played an instrument or two, and they both just loved Christian music and always just had it playing. Like when we had a CD player, it was on the CD player. Then when we switched over to like streaming services, it was always on for streaming services. So just have always been around music, always loved music. Started playing piano in 2nd grade. So that was kind of my introduction to actually being a musician myself. And then because I was always listening to Christian music, it was just kind of always like, I always loved Christian music. So then beginning to write it, when I discovered that I liked writing, I was like, cool, we're just going to do this. I like listening to it, so why not write it as well? So
Awesome. Do you have any inspirations when you were like younger? Like who were were some of your favorites when you were listening to the music when you were younger, or like songwriting wise, who are some of your inspirations?
A big one's always been Toby Mac. I've always loved listening to his stuff. Toby Mac, Matthew West, Newsboys. Well, I guess if you go really old school, DC Talk. So just some of the big guys, just enjoyed listening to them. I feel like if you kind of step out of the Christian realm a little bit, I also love Owl City and Ben Rector. So those have been some kind of inspirations in my work, and just some that I've enjoyed listening to, and then have kind of helped me, I don't know, grow my songwriting, if you get where I'm going.
Ben Rector is a great artist. One of my favorite albums is actually Brand New by Ben Rector. So that's like one of my favorite albums to play.
It was so good. That's such a good album.
And he's coming to a city near me, and I just want to buy tickets for the concert, even though he's like the opening act. I just want to buy tickets just to see him.
Right.
Flash forward to now. Can you tell us a bit about what's going on with your music nowadays? Like where you at? What are you doing?
Yeah. So as of recording this, so we recorded this on the 28th of September. So that would make tomorrow the release of my 2nd full-length album. And this album is titled The Good Life. And it'll be streaming anywhere you listen to music. And I also have CDs for sale on my website, which is fun. So like I said, it's my 2nd full-length album. And so over the last like 5 years, I put out an EP, which was kind of my first Christian project, which you actually can't find that EP anywhere anymore because I don't like it anymore, because it was, I like it because I see it as like the stepping stone to get to where I am now, but it doesn't really speak to like who I am as an artist anymore. So I released that one, and then I released in 2020 my first full-length album, which you can still find anywhere. And then tomorrow, or I guess when you're watching this now, it will be out. So you can find it anywhere you listen to music. My 2nd album titled The Good Life.
So, hey, can you tell us a little bit about that first album? Like what inspired you writing it? Do you have any personal favorite songs from it?
Let's see. So at that point, like I was just kind of writing, just I don't know. I wasn't like hardcore writing. I was more just writing kind of whenever I had an idea. And so now we're at this point, I'm like, I just try to make it a habit to write. So even if I don't have any ideas or any thoughts about what I should write, I just make myself sit down and write. But back in those days, it was more just like, oh, whenever I have a good idea, I'll just write it. And so that album was more just a kind of a collection of random songs that I had written throughout the last like year or something like that. So I still I still enjoy listening to that album. Couple of my favorite tracks are probably the title track, which is titled which is In Everything. That's probably one of my favorites. And then there's one called, oh, what's that one called? Caught in the Middle. That's what it's called. So those are a couple of my favorite tracks. Yeah, it's still one of those projects that's like I look back at it and I'm like, you know, this isn't a perfect project. I mean, what project really is ever perfect, you know? But I still can look back at that one and be happy with it, because it was fun. It was something I enjoyed. It's something I still enjoy listening to. So
And jumping forward, can you talk a little bit about your new album?
yeah. So like kind of like I was saying, over the last couple years, I've tried to be more tried to become more of a person who is like actually a songwriter rather than somebody who just writes songs. Well, somebody who writes songs is more just like randomly writes a song when they are inspired. A songwriter, it's like part of their lifestyle, part of who they are. And so like over this album is a collection of songs that I wrote over the last almost 3 years. And over the last 3 years, I've written close to 200 songs. And on this album, there's just 11 songs on it. And then there's an outro track as well, which is basically just the credits for the album. So 11 songs that are lyrics. Yeah. So when you look at that, like 11 songs out of over 200 songs, it's much more, the first one was a little more random, just kind of a collection of songs. This one is like a tailored, a crafted story. I tried to be very intentional kind of with where I was going with that. So that would be, I think, something that sets it apart from the first one is just the intentionality behind it. But then also with the very first album, I did everything myself. So I recorded all the instruments, I mixed everything, I mastered everything. And whenever you have something where one person's doing everything, there are certain areas that are just going to lack. Because like whenever you're doing everything, when you take something from the recording phase into the mixing phase, there's emotional weight behind all of the songs already in your mind. So it's just like, it's a lot harder to be more methodical with the way that you mix. And it's just more like, it's more emotion based than just like, oh, this is what sounds good. So with this album, with my second album, I actually worked with a guy to mix and master the whole thing. So I recorded everything, and I produced the whole thing. I recorded about half the instruments myself, and then I also worked with a few guys who played some other instruments. So the electric guitars, bass guitar, and drums were not me. Those were a few guys that I worked with, which was really fun. So just having a few more people on the project, both in instruments and then the mixing and mastering phase, also just really I don't know, I feel like it just helped take the project to the next level. So super excited about that.
It's pretty cool. And you have a website. So when I was checking for your website, like I know about your music and everything. So I checked. You have a Patreon. Can you talk to our listeners about a little bit about your Patreon and how they can help support you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Patreon is something that we just kind of launched back when I was doing some fundraising stuff for the album. I haven't done a whole lot with it yet. It's something that I would like to start growing eventually. But at this point, I don't even really have a ton of people who would be interested in supporting financially, like monthly. So eventually I would really love to see that could be kind of a community that grows where I can share, like kind of like I mentioned before, I wrote like over 200 songs in the last few years and only 12 of them or 11 of them are on this album. So the Patreon community would be somewhere where if you want to hear those those 200 other songs, that would be the place to go, because you're never probably most of those you're never going to hear on somewhere like Spotify or YouTube. Maybe every so often you'd get an unreleased song on like TikTok or something like that. But for the most part, yeah, the Patreon community would be somewhere where you can get benefits like that. You can get behind the scenes on like songwriting and producing and all that kinds of stuff. So yeah, I mean, so if you're listening to this and you would be interested in that, you can find all that on my website. And yeah, you'd be one of the first to help that community grow. So
You guys can support him there, or you guys can also give him support by following him on. He's on all social media platforms. Are you on TikTok? Because you brought up TikTok. I'm just curious.
Yep, I am on TikTok. I haven't, like, it's been one of those things that's like I've really wanted to be consistent, but then I'm consistent for a couple weeks and then life gets busy. So, you know, it's not a huge following. I have a couple hundred followers and I post every so often, but I want to get better at that. So yeah, you can find me on TikTok as well.
Yeah. We just have a few extra minutes. I don't want to take your whole day. Is there anything you want to bring up, discuss? Any shows where people can
Yeah.
come?
Yeah. So I'm with the release of the album, I'm doing a short tour. Nothing crazy. It'll just be me, like with acoustic and piano, and then my wife singing background vocals, which will be really fun. And so like got a few dates booked already. And so I guess I'd say if you're listening to this and you'd be interested in having me come to an event or whatever, there's a form, or what is it? I think it's a form. It might be a button. I can't remember, on my website, where you can get in contact and we can chat about that. But yeah, I mean, other than the album coming out, yeah, I think the shows those will be good. But yeah, it's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me. I know, like I said, Brandon wasn't here. He sends his regards and wishes he could be here. So thank you again for meeting with just one of us.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you to everyone who tuned in to listen, and we'll see you next time. And remember, if you like what you're hearing, like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast, and check out Caleb's music as well. Take care, everyone.